Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Audit Committee September meeting. The membership should note that Councillor Wallace has replaced Councillor Grimshaw on this committee. Is Councillor Wallace present? Hello, Councillor Wallace, welcome. Nice to see you here. And we also have today in attendance Councillor Swinburne, who is sitting at the back there as an observer. So nice to see you, Councillor. We have apologies for absence. So I think Andrea has apologies for absence. No. We have several apologies for absence, I think, but we'll take them as read.
Chair, if I may, I understand that we have had a number of apologies this morning from opposition members and councillors Dickinson, Scott and Taylor, and that does raise an issue about whether the committee is quorate, because under the terms of reference the quorum rules require that there are at least 2 opposition members present. I've just had a discussion with the monitoring officer on this point, and his advice is that with those 3 absences, the committee is not quorate. That's
yes, you're quite correct. The meeting isn't quorate, but it doesn't need to be quorate on most of the items on this agenda. In fact, there is only, I think, 1 item on the agenda that would need the approval of the committee. The rest is just for information. So my understanding is that we can actually go ahead and hold the meeting, because even though it isn't quorate, because we're not taking any decisions that are going to be binding. If it comes to the point where we are going to have to take a decision on anything, which is going to have to be put before a quorate meeting, we will bring that forward to the next meeting and make sure that the decision gets made in a quorate environment. But we can still discuss the issues in this meeting. That is my understanding, and I'll take that from Andrea. You give me that advice that that is the correct way to proceed. So I think that's the best way to proceed this morning. Councillors, you had your hand up there. Just a question.
Yeah, I did. Thanks. This might be quite an appropriate time to discuss the last meeting. I was going to bring it up in minutes, which is next anyway. You'll see. Well, you just said what I was going to say anyway, which is about being quorate. But if you look at the minutes, you'll see on page 9, Councillor Dickinson left the meeting, which nobody noticed. That meant we weren't quorate then, because we only had 1 member of the opposition. And there were decisions made after that. So my question is, are those decisions now invalid, or what? Because we did make decisions, but there was only 1 member of the opposition left at that stage.
Technically, yes, the meeting became in quorate when Councillor Dickinson left. I think that the key thing is that if any of the decisions are disputed or should be challenged, I think we have the opportunity to do that. So I think that's the key thing. It's a difficult one when people leave mid-meeting. The whole meeting can't collapse and stop its business just because of that. But I think everybody should have the opportunity to actually read the minutes, see what decisions were made, and actually challenge them if necessary. But it is a valid point that you make. But I think in this particular meeting, in order to get the progress made, I think we can actually go ahead, because there's nothing here that actually requires any big decision. So we're not actually, it's mostly for information.
There's nothing here, Chair, but we will be approving these minutes, and I'm not sure we can approve a minute stating that we've accepted things when in actual fact there wasn't quorate, so we can't accept them, or not accept them as the case may be.
Okay. Right. Well, if you see, you've moved on to the minutes already, but so let's go through the minutes. I'm not going to propose to do a page turner on these minutes, because obviously everybody's got a copy of them. Are there any issues that need to be raised other than the issue that the councillor has just raised there? Yes, councillor.
Yeah, well, that actually does bring up quite an important issue, because we did have, after Councillor Dickinson left the meeting, and the meeting was therefore not quorate at that stage, the very next report was the final statement of accounts, And as you know, there was a vote on that, I in particular didn't feel that the committee was in a position to accept the accounts at that stage, and yet there's a resolution to approve the statement of accounts taken when the committee wasn't quorate. So I think that issue will probably have to go to a future meeting to be resolved properly.
Yeah, I think there was some debate around the approval of those accounts at the meeting, and I think we took the decision, which was a bit of an ad hoc decision, is that it was a bigger risk to not give a tacit approval to them than it was actually to give a tacit approval to them, because it would have put so many different things out of kilter, including a lot of third parties who were relying on these accounts being signed off. Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't want this to be the case, but effectively, if we've approved the accounts, when the meeting's not quorate, we haven't actually approved the accounts. And I'm just conscious of the fact, knowing what I do know about the sort of the implications that has on the wider North East and its pension arrangements. You know, a lot of people were waiting for those accounts to be approved, but technically it sounds like we haven't actually approved them, and therefore all of the other sets of accounts that are being approved on the back of our accounts being approved are not properly approved either. So maybe we need to have a emergency meeting of the audit committee in the next few days to approve the accounts and get that all onto a regular footing. I don't know whether Cameron might advise on that, or Jan, but it is a concern.
Yeah, I'm going to defer to Jan. Can you give some comment on that, Jan, as to what the procedure should be?
Yes, Chair, I share Councillor Oliver's concerns. Neil Masson, the Deputy Monitoring Officer, is on standby and has offered to join the committee to give advice. And I do think this will be an appropriate juncture to bring Neil into the discussion. If I may suggest that the committee adjourns for a few moments while I try to get Neil to join, because I think as monitoring officer, you know, it is for him to give that advice. But the consequences of those accounts not having been properly approved, you know, are quite far-reaching, as Councillor Oliver has outlined. So, Chair, with your permission, I would like to suggest that we have a short adjournment while I try to get Neil to join us.
Okay, right. We'll take a 5-minute adjournment, and we'll regroup again. If you can let us know, Jan, as soon as he's there.
Sorry, Neil Masson, who's Deputy Monitoring Officer.
Right, thank you. Neil Masson is going to give us an opinion on where we are with this, and I'd like Cameron as well as our external auditor to give us an opinion from their point of view as well, because it is quite an unusual situation that we find ourselves in over the sign-off. So if Neil's on the line.
Yes, Chair. It's been raised with me the matter of quorum. I don't know whether that's what you want advice on. Is that the matter? Is that the matter, Chair?
Yeah.
I understand that we may be in queries.
Well, it's not so much for this meeting particularly, Neil. It was for the previous meeting where we signed off the accounts. An opposition councillor left the meeting just before that particular item was discussed and signed off. It escaped everybody's notice that had actually made the meeting in quorum at that point, technically according to the council's rules. We discussed the accounts as normal and signed them off, and they have actually been now signed off. Our external auditors have told us that that is done. That is a done deal. They have been signed off. Several third parties obviously are involved in this and have put things in train on the basis of those accounts being signed off. So we just wanted your opinion as to what the procedure should be at this point. Obviously, you can't unring a bell. We've signed the document off. What is the procedure at this point?
Well, Chair, I think in terms of doing anything today, just going back to the query point, it might depend whether we can actually proceed with the meeting today. But I think
it's less to do with the meeting today, Neil, because we're not going to take any decisions, particularly on the things that are in front of us today. They're for information, really, but it was for the last meeting where we signed off the accounts, and whether that is actually acceptable. It is probably a matter of procedure for the council, but the deed has been done. We have signed them off as an audit committee. So what's the position on that?
I'm sorry, Chair. I think as soon as we can reconvene with a quorum meeting, then maybe the accounts are brought back just to confirm in a quorum meeting that the audit committee is happy with the accounts. I think that's probably the best we can do. As you say, it's already happened, but I think a confirmatory resolution once the meeting is definitely quorate is probably the best process, I would say.
Okay. Well, I'm going to put that. And the final word from Cameron is the external auditor. What's your view on this, Cameron?
Simplistically put, once the audit report is signed and issued by Mazar, then the audit's concluded in relation to the accounts, regardless of quoracy or not. But I think Neil's suggestion about the confirmatory meeting would make sense, based on a quick discussion I've just had with the Engagement Quality Control Reviewer.
Okay. In that case, then I'm going to put it to the committee that I think the decision seems to be pragmatic and it seems to have made itself, is that what we need is a separate short meeting just to look at this issue again, make sure we round enough people up to be quorum at this time, even at gunpoint, and make sure we discuss this and have a proper discussion about it, and then we can honestly hold our hands up and say these have been discussed and have been signed off by a quorum meeting of the council. Would that work for everybody? Yeah. Councillor.
Chair, can I just make one point? I mean, obviously there's been a change of membership of the committee, so one of the councillors, Councillor Wallace, of course, will then be making a decision on evidence he hasn't heard. So what I mean by that is, if you're going to ask a councillor to vote, they really need to hear a lot of what was said in the previous meeting.
Well, if you're referring to the accounts, obviously what I would like to do is to get those accounts back in front of us again, just to have a final discussion and sign them off, not just a kind of a technical, let's put your hand up and sign them off, but let's actually discuss them again, let everybody see them and get them on the table. It will be, I've got to say, slightly academic if the report has already been signed off by the external auditors, but we need to make sure that we've actually dotted the I's and crossed the T's, because we certainly don't want any accusations that we didn't actually sign these things off and using the procedures properly. So it obviously escaped everybody's notice at the last meeting that we had slipped into being in quorum. So it's something we need to keep a tighter rein on. I think if everybody's happy with that as a procedure, there will have to be a second meeting, just a short one, just a one-issue meeting, if you like, just to look at these accounts and sign them off properly. So if everybody's happy with that, I'll ask if Andrea can make that happen, and we'll get that in the next week or so, and try to get that done as fast as possible. Okay. But if everybody's happy with that, we'll move on that basis. So thank you for bringing that to our attention, Councillor. I'm saying thank you. Obviously, it's it's something which it shouldn't really happen, but it has. But we're trying to rectify it. And thank you very much, Neil, for your advice on that. If you're happy with that as a solution, I think that works for everybody.
Chair, if I may, while we have Neil here, can we just be clear about the basis on which today's meeting is proceeding? So my understanding is that the committee will have the opportunity to discuss and ask questions on the reports in front of them, but will not be making any decisions. And my assumption, therefore, is that those reports will need to come back for formal approval at the next quorum meeting of this committee, whether that's a replacement for today's meeting or whether it's at the next normal meeting of this committee. But I just would appreciate some clarity on that point while we have Neil with us.
Yeah, I think my understanding, Jan, is that there are very few things that actually need a decision of this meeting here today on the agenda, so we can actually have these for information. But if decisions are required, we will park those until the next sort of extraordinary meeting, if you like, and bring them forward to that one. I think that's the key thing.
Could I just give some advice on process? Because I did look at the constitution on the rules relating to quorum before I came on. That might not be a problem, but as long as we're not proceeding as a formal audit committee. I mean, it's probably best if we just read out the section from the procedure rules on quorum. It says, during any meeting, if the chair counts the number of members present and declares that there is not a quorum present, then the meeting will adjourn immediately. Remaining business will be considered at a time and a date fixed by the chair. If they do not fix a date, the remaining business will be considered at the next ordinary meeting. So I think what the suggestion is that, you know, as long as no decision is made, then we can proceed and discuss matters. But as I see it, it wouldn't be as a formal audit committee. That can be done informally, and it shouldn't be recorded. I don't know whether this has been recorded if it's on YouTube at the moment. But we'd have to formally end the meeting. And of course, you know, if officers want to present a report as the ordinary would in an informal manner, as everyone is actually, you know, I know it's inconvenient, Chair, everyone is here. And I think that's probably the basis that we would have to proceed on.
Yeah, thank you for that, Neil. Councillor Oliver.
I think I sort of put my hand up before Neil spoke there, but that reinforces really what Jan was saying, is that if all of these things need to come back to be rediscussed, then I frankly see little point in continuing. Now that I've heard that, I agreed with you at the outset that we should continue, but if they do need to be rediscussed, then what's the point in discussing them now when we're going to have to come back and rediscuss them again? Okay. And they're all, and I accept that they don't all require decisions, but that's not really generally the purpose of the audit committee, is to make decisions. It's sort of, so I suggest that we just basically sort of finish now, and particularly if it can't be broadcast and it's not, you know, it isn't sort of subject to public scrutiny, and we reconvene and try and arrange with the opposition groups to get their members here for the next meeting. Okay,
thank you, Councillor. That's interesting. The Chief Executive would like to...
Thank you, Chair, through yourself. I would just say, I think, given what the monitoring officer, the Deputy Monitoring Officer, has just read from the Constitution, I would tend to agree with Councillor Oliver that rather than, because it says very clearly there that the meeting would be adjourned, it would probably be better, I do apologise, obviously we weren't to know that members would give late apologies this morning, but it may well be better to postpone the meeting now and seek to have a meeting within 7 to 10 days and ensuring that it's quorate at that time. I'm not sure it would be helpful to continue at this point on that basis.
I think, having listened to all these arguments, I've got to say my initial thought was to actually continue on, but I think that certainly having heard the kind of letter of the law that Neil read out there, it doesn't seem like that is the appropriate thing to do. So I think we have very little option, unfortunately, and it is with great regret, because obviously we're delaying things, but we have to adjourn this meeting, stop the live stream, and I'll ask the Secretariat to arrange another meeting sometime, as Daljeet has said, sometime within the next 7 to 10 days, which is very inconvenient, obviously, but we have to try to make sure we get it quorate this time, and we'll restart the meeting then. So, unfortunately, everybody, thank you for coming, and we will postpone things until we can get quorate. So, thank you.